Chelsea have got some brand new owners in charge of the club, and according to Google, they're going to be giving Tommy Tuchel £200 million to spend this summer. But with key players such as Rudiger and Christensen leaving the club on free transfers and Lukaku going back to Inter Milan for absolutely pennies, Chelsea find themselves with a really mammoth task this summer. So I'm going to take Todd Boehly's money and see if I can do a full summer rebuild of Chelsea and get them to a state where they can win a Premier League title this season. Chelsea have typically played in a general 3-5-2 formation or a 5-2-3 formation, whether that's players out wide or sitting a little bit narrower. Football Manager isn't really the best way to demonstrate how Chelsea actually play in terms of these actual positions. They are a bit more fluid in real life, but this is the best I can sort of do very quickly in Football Manager on a tactics screen. But essentially, we need to be looking for versatile players who can play in a number of positions and roles. Before we do any transfers, though, we have to talk about contracts. And actually, there aren't that many contracts running out at Chelsea. The only player that I want to keep is Azpilicueta, because we're going to have some experience in this back line. Luckily, we can trigger an extension on his contract rather than give him a new deal, so I'm just going to simply trigger the extension. Obviously, Rudiger and Christensen have left in real life, so we'll get rid of those guys shortly, but the rest of the players that are available for contract renewals, I'm not really bothered about any of them. None of them are very good right now, and none of them have good potential, so they can all go. Hello, Tom from the future here. Rather than go through every single out transfer throughout the video, which would make it far too long, I'm going to show you every single out that we've done right now. So obviously Rudiger, Christensen and Lukaku have left the club in real life, so we reflected that in game. But we've also sold a plethora of players, raising £57 million for the transfer fund. So Marcos Alonso went to Juventus, Emerson to Real Sociedad, Batshuayi to Besiktas, Malang Sarr to Gladbach and Ross Barkley to Lyon. There's also a few players leaving the club on loan, Gilmour, Broha, Ampadu going out to various different clubs for a bit of money as well, which is quite good to raise some funds for the club. And looking at the players that Chelsea currently have, there are certainly some areas that we need to strengthen, particularly the back line. Now, Thiago Silva is still at the club and still a very good player, but at 37 years old, I don't really want to be relying on him too much. For me, the strongest area of this Chelsea team is the midfield. Kante and Mount are great players, but Jorginho is in there as well, one of the best players in the world. Kovacic, also quality in there. He can play in and around in multiple positions and roles in the centre of midfield. And even Ziyech can help in the centre of midfield as well. So it's not an area that I think needs to be strengthened too much. So let's start looking to bring some players in. And the first port of call for me is to be looking at the players who are out of contract this summer, because you can find some really great players at the end of their contracts, as Real Madrid and Barcelona found out with Rudiger and Christensen. Obviously, we need to strengthen this Chelsea backline, and I think a great player to come in would be Romagnoli. He's leaving AC Milan at the end of his contract according to Google, and actually it looks like Fulham are in for him in real life, so potentially in real life he's not rated that highly, but I see a very solid centre-back who's just played 19 games in Serie A in a title-winning AC Milan team in the season where he had quite a few injuries. And on a deal that's only going to cost us £87,000 per week, I think it's a really solid deal. I also think that Chelsea need to look to the future as well, and I think 23-year-old Jules Koundé would be a fantastic signing for them to bring into the team. Still young enough to develop and reach his potential, but also good enough right now for Chelsea's first team. The only issue I have is a £68 million release fee clause, which they're going to make us trigger. Like, I cannot see a situation where we have to pay less than that. If we go, I don't know, 25 million, suggest it, they just say it's unacceptable. You know, I think I'll put 50 down and make an offer, but I think we're going to have to pay that 68. And yeah, they rejected £50 million for Koundé. We're going to have to go to 68 to trigger that release fee clause. That's going to take out over a quarter of the £200 million budget that we've been given for this summer. So the next centre-back I want to try and look at is going to be a little bit cheaper. Potentially, this could be seen as a bit of a Football Manager signing and one that wouldn't really happen in real life, but I think this player represents amazing value for money. It's Sebastian Coates from Sporting. He's got fantastic attributes: 17 heading, 18 marking, 16 tackling, positioning of 18, strength of 18, jumping reach of 16. The only thing that lets him down a little bit is his pace and acceleration. That's not the best, but at 6'5", he's an aerial monster. 31 years old, still got a good few years ahead of him. I think would be an astute signing to add some experience into that back line for Chelsea. And he is a lot cheaper than Koundé as well, £12.5 million up front and 12.5 down the line. And hopefully with these three centre-backs joining us, that's going to solve a centre-back issue at Chelsea. But I would like to add some more, but if we have the money later on down the line. Now we need to move on to the replacement for Romelu Lukaku, and this is going to be an audacious attempt to sign a player. He actually might be joining Barcelona in real life if you believe the media. I'm not quite sure if that's true because Barcelona seem to have no money right now, so how can they afford him? But I think Chelsea need to have a look at Robert Lewandowski. He's only got 1 year left on his contract at Bayern Munich. If Bayern Munich want to make some money off him, they need to sell him now, ideally. And I think Chelsea are one of the few clubs in the world that would actually have the allure and pulling power to get Lewandowski to sign for them. And because he's only got 1 year left on his contract, it's not going to be an astronomical transfer fee. Although I have messed it up and they won't talk to me anymore. Well, interestingly, Bayern Munich have accepted a £60 million bid. The wages, though, that's going to be the issue. I mean, he's come in wanting £450,000 per week. Is that? I don't know if that's worth it. The contract's ridiculous. The contract is. I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Back to the drawing boards on strikers for now. Going back to the Chelsea tactics screen, then I think there is a hole on the right hand side of Chelsea's attack. If they're going to play wide on the right hand side or a bit further inside, maybe more as a shadow striker behind the main striker, for example, something like that. And I think a great player who could really fill a role there for Chelsea is Nicolo Zaniolo from Roma, of course, having just won the Europa Conference League this past season. Again, a young player with plenty of potential is going to be very expensive. It's going to be another big transfer fee like Jules Koundé. So if we look to make the offer for him, how low can we go? Well, I suggested 35 million. They've come back wanting 92. Work to be done. I'm going to offer 40 up front, 20 down the line, and then after 10 games, £500,000 per 10 games. So it's 65 million total. And they've accepted that. Maybe should have got a bit lower. I'm also of the mind that Chelsea need to strengthen their wing-back positions. Not the first choices, because I think they've got some very good first-choice players in Reece James and Ben Chilwell, but they could definitely do with some backups in those areas. And I'll start off with Denzel Dumfries on the right-hand side, who can kind of play anywhere along that sort of right-hand side of the defence and midfield. Obviously would be more of a backup player to Reece James, but I think would be an adequate backup, very, very good backup. And for whatever reason, Football Manager, he's always available really cheap. Like, well, 6.5 million. Can we just offer 6.5 million? And they just accept it straight away. On the left-hand side, I am stuck between two players. Javi Gallen is a really solid left wing-back, and again, can kind of play anywhere along that left-hand side. But I think a better option would be Yannick Carrasco. The only issue is it's a massive difference in transfer fee. I mean, with Carrasco, we're looking at 61 to 87 million. With Gallan, we're looking at 13 to 15 million, and a lot cheaper on the wages as well. If you compare the two of them, defensively, Gallan is the better player. Offensively, though, Carrasco is much better and is overall the better player by probably quite some margin. Now, the beauty of having Cesar Azpilicueta is that you do have a player who can play on the left-hand side of the defence pretty well. So I guess there is backup in Cesar Azpilicueta. I think we move to left wing backs a little bit later on. We see what kind of money we've got left over after other priority areas to see if we can maybe afford Carrasco. Okay, so towards the end of June, players have joined the club. Some players have left the club. It leaves us a budget right now of 80 million. And that's tough because that's not enough to bring in Carrasco, a top quality striker, and a top quality centre back, all three areas that I want to improve. And I don't want to bring in lesser quality older players just for the sake of bringing players in. Like, Savic is great, but he's not the player that I think Chelsea need to be targeting. Verissimo is a really quality centre back and is young enough at 26, but he's not as good as De Ligt or Bastoni, and would only be replaced probably in a couple seasons' time by one of those two. I think we really try and make a play for Yannick Carrasco then. I think we try and go and get him in. Again, we'll start off by lowballing. I say lowballing at £50 million. They want 82 million immediately. Thanks a lot. What about 60 million? Could they do 60? They went out on 84. Let's get rid of these. And I think we can go up a little bit by 2 million, 62 million, and they just don't like that at all. Right, let's go 30 and 35, 65 million, which Atletico Madrid have mulled over and accepted. Okay, let's start the negotiations with him then, and let's see how much you... So much money. Is he worth it? Is he actually worth the 65 million and 250 grand a week nearly? Let's compare him with Ben Chilwell. Because if it's an improvement on Ben Chilwell, they're very different players, aren't they, I suppose? Chilwell, a lot more defensively sound. Carrasco offers something completely different. But with Chelsea playing predominantly three at the back, you'd maybe want a bit more of an attacking player there. Gallan offers something that is the exact same as Chilwell, essentially. Carrasco offers something different. And is comfortably the better player than both of them, probably overall. Obviously, defensively, Chilwell and Gallan are better defensively than Carrasco. but Carrasco offers something more. So how do we get this down to something a little bit more reasonable? 150, push the agent fee right up, probably just kind of keeping a lot of these bonuses as they are, and just try and work this wage down towards 150, and he's not happy at all. 190, 8.5, he's taken that. I'm not sure how happy I am with that, if I'm honest with you. Luckily, it's not my money, and it's Chelsea's money, but I think it's probably the right signing. And with Yannick Carrasco signing, it's a really good signing for Chelsea. And I'd probably actually end up starting with Ben Chilwell. And because we only put down £30 million or so up front, with a few players leaving the club, it leaves us with £62 million to spend. And if we look at the outs, potentially we could bring in another £27 million. So call that £90 million. Now, we decided earlier that Lewandowski was far too expensive, didn't we? I think someone who is more affordable and a better player to bring in is Maxi Gomez. Not a world beater, but is still young enough to improve, has got some really great attributes in areas that matter, and is an aerial threat as well, which is really important. Now, he's got a release fee clause of 120 million, but I don't think we'll need to trigger that. I think if we can go to like 16, suggest they just come back and say they can get more for him, an improved deal needs to be submitted. Okay, well, let's go 18, make the offer. And then they've come back and say they want nearly £40 million. Right, yeah, you can get more. Okay, let's keep that in there. Let's drop this down to 15 and bring that down to 10. 25 million. And they want a bit more. So how about we go like 16 and 12 to then get rid of this £10 million extra here, because they like more money up front. 28 million, deal. So obviously it's not Lewandowski coming in, but Maxi Gomez offers something that other players at Chelsea don't offer, and Chelsea do have a pretty decent attack, right? They've got players like Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, Mason Mount. We brought in Zaniolo. There's Pulisic at the club as well. There's a really good attacking talent who can score goals. If we didn't have to bring in a plethora of centre-backs, then maybe Chelsea and we could have gone for Lewandowski. So I've sold everyone that I want to sell. It's given us £94 million left. 16 of that is going to go on Maxi Gomez, which will give us just under £80 million to spend. I think we go back for a centre-back. But could we make a deal for De Ligt work? Transfer, make an offer. We can go up to £70 million up front, right, pretty much, or up to about £80 million up front, right? Let's put 50 up front, and it's going to have to be a big one, isn't it? It's going to have to be a big one. Let's say 50 down the line. And they say 157 million. Right, 60 up front, 50 down the line, and they come back and say 97. Right, we're getting somewhere. It's going to be expensive though, 65, and I can't go any more than that 50, can I? So let's add in some other instalments of another 10 million. So it's 125 million. I don't like that. Let's go 60. Let's go 120 million. Which they just flat out refuse. Bastoni is equally as good. Obviously not got quite as much potential, a little bit older, but would be very, very good. So let's go 50 up front and add in 3 instalments of, let's say, 20 mil, £70 million total. They still want more. Let's remove that, push that up to make it 75 million. Basically, let's do that. 75 million, accept it. It's huge, but I think it helps build a bit of a dynasty in this Chelsea backline. Like, the centre-backs we've signed, at least some of them are younger ones, could be here for 10 seasons. Romagnoli, easily another 5, 6, 7 seasons as well. And there's Chelsea's back three for another 6, 7 years. And so I think we've built a really, really great Chelsea team here. I would argue this back three is the best back three in the Premier League. I think it's fantastic. Zaniolo and Pulisic can obviously play a little bit narrower if needed to as well. Obviously, plenty of players in off the bench who can play in those roles as well. So there's plenty of options there in that attack. Mount and Kante working beautifully. Maxi Gomez up top is great. And then also we've got a few players at the club like Trevor Chalobah, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Conor Gallagher, more defenders and midfielders who can kind of fill in the squad. Also therefore squad registration rules as well to make sure they meet homegrown criteria, but they are pretty decent players. And then also you can see we've got plenty of players out on loan who I think will be pretty decent for Chelsea in the future. So we have spent a lot of money across the 2 seasons because the transfer window gets broken down over 2 windows for whatever reason. We spent 160 and 168. Now, a lot of this is also down the line as well. It's not all up front. So in total, the transfers are costing 328 million, which is a lot of money, but a lot of it is also down the line. We've also sold 57 million pounds worth of players, which is not bad going. The season preview has Chelsea in 3rd place, which I think is reasonable. I think that's probably as high as we can be. Obviously, this Chelsea side is not yet as good as Liverpool and Man City, particularly in the attack. But I do think the back line is the best in the Premier League. Obviously, Laporte, Van Dijk are in the dream team. They're very, very good. But I would say that as a combined unit, it's the best backline in the Premier League. So now all we have to do is put Tommy Tuchel back in charge of Chelsea, simulate a season, and see how this Chelsea side have got on. Okay, so we've simulated a season, and I'm very excited to find out how this Chelsea side have done. You know what? I really think we could be fighting for a title here. I mean, I'm saying we as if I'm really invested in this. I'm not even a Chelsea fan or anything like this. I just think we've built a really good team. And so looking at the Premier League, 6th. I feel very let down by that. I mean, I expected Liverpool and Chelsea to be right up there, and I thought we'd be right behind them, but to be over 30 points off, that's massive. With Arsenal, Newcastle United finishing ahead of us as well, and level on points with Tottenham. So out of players who have played more than 5 or so games for the club, it's actually Sebastian Coates who's got the highest average rating with a 7.31 this season, so he was a pretty decent signing, as was Jules Koundé on a 7.29, so I feel like I've been justified with those 2 transfers. Bastoni's got a 7.19, which is not bad going, to be fair. Maxi Gomez has got a 7.1, but only 6 goals this season, that's pretty poor. And then we get further down to players like Romagnoli, Carrasco and Zaniolo, who are nowhere near that 7 rating. The goals this season have come from Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. I guess Tommy Tuchel has been playing these guys a lot more, I suppose. The assists coming from Azpilicueta, Jorginho and Werner himself, actually, and Kai Havertz. So I guess Kai and Timo have been pretty essential players for Chelsea. So definitely some hit and miss transfers there. Interestingly, Tommy Tuchel made one more signing to the club. He brought in Luis Muriel, who's now at Wolves. Brought in for 12 million and then immediately sold him for 13.25 to Wolves. And then looking on the outside, actually also got rid of Denzel Dumfries as well to Ajax for 3.7 million. That's surprising. Why has he got rid of him? He just never played him. I mean, he was meant to be backup, but I'm surprised he just got rid of him. And it's been a really poor season. They got knocked out of the EFL Cup 3rd round. They got knocked out of the FA Cup 4th round and lost the Champions League first knockout round to Barcelona. And actually, it's not even Thomas Tuchel in charge now. It's Luis Enrique. He's the manager. So when did Tuchel leave the club? He left in December, just after Christmas. And then John Terry came in as an interim manager. And then Luis Enrique's been there for the rest of the season. To be honest, hasn't really done much better at all. In fact, they've got the exact same win ratio. 47% for Luis Enrique, 47% for Tuchel. So was this rebuild a success? Well, based on what we've seen in the simulation, no, but I do think in real life these transfers would do a lot better than they have done in game. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section though. Make sure to drop a like on the video for me and subscribe if you are new around here, and click on one of these videos on the side of the screen right now to watch some more content of mine. Until next time, have a good one. Goodbye.